Now, we begin in Nigeria, where the government yesterday expressed concern about the rising cases of COVID-19, saying that with the high prospects of patients outstripping the 3,500 bed spaces that are currently available in the country, it may consider home care treatment. Now, this comes just as the Nigeria Center for Disease Control confirmed 204 new cases of COVID-19 in 17 states and the Federal Capital Territory. The agency announced this on Twitter on Thursday night via its Twitter handle, and the number of recovered patients has increased, fortunately, from 305 to 319, but unfortunately, fatalities have increased from 51 to 58. Now, a total of 1,932 cases have been confirmed in 34 states and the Federal Capital Territory. Cross River and Kogi have not recorded any case of COVID-19 so far. A breakdown of the new cases showed that 80 were recorded in Kano State, 45 in Lagos, 12 in Gombe, 9 each in Bauchi and Sokoto, 7 each in Borno and Edo, 6 each in Rivers and Ogun, 4 each in the FCT, Akwa Ibom and Bayelsa, 3 in Kaduna, 2 each in Oyo, Delta and Nasarawa, and 1 each in Ondo and Kebbi. So, Doctor, here we have 204 new cases of COVID-19, and the most amount that was recorded was in Kano State. 80 cases recorded in Kano State. Now, that is quite worrying. That is quite worrying to see. We've also had an increase in deaths to 58, which is quite a high rise. And our rate of discharge has gone to 319, which is the good news, I guess. But Kano State clearly is a worry here, and it has become the second epicenter now.
Yes, it's now number 2 on the list, following Lagos.
Yeah.
In terms of confirmed cases, Kano has a total of 219 from about 73 just about a week ago. And if you look at the way the numbers have increased, you may say it's because of testing. They now have 2 testing laboratories in Kano, and you have, the NDDC team working with the task force in Kano State. We're likely to see those numbers rise further. But what is even more worrisome now, as at this morning, is the fact that the numbers in Nigeria have not peaked yet. We haven't reached the peak yet, and yet by next week, we're easing restrictions.
Yeah.
When even in a place like the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is still talking about coming up with a number of options and an exit strategy before the United Kingdom can begin to talk about, lifting the lockdown. Now, a number of issues emerged yesterday at the task force media briefing in Abuja. The first is the concern expressed by Chikwe Ihekwezu, the head of the Center for Disease Control, about the fact that Nigeria is running out of bed spaces.
Yes. Now,
he in fact said nationwide we have a total of 3,500 bed spaces.
Yeah.
And if the total number of confirmed cases is already 1,932, what it means is that technically, we don't have enough bed space. And it talks about changing strategy. And I think that, in terms of strategy, the situation in which we have found ourselves now was foreseeable. Now, what the Presidential Task Force is suggesting is that maybe people will be treated from home. I'll comment on that shortly. And they're also appealing to landlords and hotel owners to give up their, spaces to be used as isolation centers. Now, going to negotiate with hotel owners, that may be a waste of resources. Suppose the hotel owners don't want to give it out free. And we're talking of a situation here whereby we have scarce resources. Managing scarce resources should be part of the strategy that Ihekwezu referred to yesterday. Now, what are the lessons that we can learn from other jurisdictions? I think the mistake that has been made so far is that anybody that tests positive in Nigeria is just taken to an isolation center. And if it is true, as Minister Ihanire, that is the Minister of Health, pointed out, that most of the cases in Nigeria, in fact, he said up to 95% of the cases in Nigeria are mild, and that the percentage that is, severe or critical is no more than 5%. And that in any case, if you come down with mild symptoms, you will survive anyway. And that he is very optimistic that the number of recoveries in Nigeria will continue to rise. If he's telling the truth, what it then means is that you don't need to take everybody that presents mild symptoms into an isolation center, so that you can free the space for persons who have severe and critical cases. And we have many examples from other parts of the world. Look at the United Kingdom. Prime Minister Boris Johnson was not taken to St. Thomas Hospital until his case became serious. He was there in Downing Street. Matt Hancock self-isolated in his own residence. In the U.S., Chris Cuomo of CNN, he stayed in the basement of his house, right? And then even the head of the National Medical Team in the United Kingdom, I mean, he wasn't taken to an isolation center. And these are countries that have better resources, bigger hospitals, who have the capacity to build, 1,000 bed space isolation centers in a matter of hours. But here in Nigeria, where we have very limited resources, we seem to have adopted the wrong strategy of taking everybody into isolation centers. I mean, in Spain, a whole family of 11, they isolated in their own house.
Yeah.
Now, and none of them died. You may say that here, given certain specific or peculiar cultural circumstances, persons who live in face me, I face you, all these, one-bedroom apartments in small bungalows where you have 30 people living in about 8 rooms, where that may be difficult, to say they should be cared for from home. But there are also families that are affected that live in big houses. Such persons can be treated at home. They treat them symptoms, and then they will recover. So that, I think, is one thing for them to worry about. And when they come up with the new strategy, it will be something, again, that we will evaluate. Now, you mentioned the Kano. Kano has become, as you said, the second epicenter. I find it absolutely curious that Governor Ganduje of Kano State is now saying that the federal government should allow the state government to relax the lockdown in Kano State. The president in his address had said, Kano will be on lockdown for 2 weeks. And now the governor of that same state, a state that has been accused of being responsible for exporting COVID-19 amajuris to Kaduna and other neighboring states, is now saying that he wants the thing to be relaxed. I find that really curious. Another third thing that I saw yesterday was that Ihekwazu, again, addressed the issue of what was given to Nigeria by the Jack Ma Foundation. And he gave a complete breakdown. 100,000 face masks, 999,000 overall gowns, 20,000 reagents for testing, and 913 face shields. And out of all of that, Lagos got the bulk of it, followed by the FCT, followed by Osun, Oyo, and Ogun. And I think that that's a case of accountability and transparency, which was useful.
Certainly. I mean, I think it's good that the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 is looking at adopting a new strategy with regards to who they are putting into isolation centers. 3,500 beds in a country of 200 million certainly is already limited in capacity. And when you have Africa having just 3% of its population over the age of 80, we already know that most of our cases are going to be mild to moderate. So we do have to adopt a strategy whereby we consider the fact that some citizens can and should stay at home and be treated at home. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now is Rotus Odiri for today's headlines in the business world. Good morning, Rotus. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Leila. Good morning, Dr.
And happy Workers' Day.
Hey, happy Workers' Day to you both as well. So following our discussion yesterday where we talked about the central bank announcing that it was going to resume dollar sales to foreign exchange sales to parents needing to pay for school fees for children, SMEs that need to make imports, and also BDCs as well. We've now, seen that there's more good news from the federal government in that they have signaled their intent to unify our foreign exchange rates as well as our forex windows. They made this known to the IMF as part of their letter of intent when they communicated to them that we wanted to get the access to the $3.4 billion RFI facility to fight COVID-19. Again, I should stress to people that, as folks know, there are no strings attached to the funds, right? So we're not required to do anything. But the IMF just put some suggestions in there saying that, one, you need to look at your foreign exchange rate windows. IMF also said, and Dr. Abati mentioned this yesterday, the import substitution and the 41-item list. They did mention that we need to remove that. And they also mentioned the LDR, loan deposit ratio policy as well, and that, we need to possibly, that it's affecting bank balance sheets, and we need to look at that as well. So, we're following through. Federal government is following through in that they're now looking at FX unification. And as far as what it's going to mean to the country with regards to, improving FDI inflows into the nation and so on and so forth. The Economic Advisory Council has also mentioned this as well with regards to unification of the rates. And so this is promising from the federal government in that they are moving towards that direction and what it's going to mean for the country as well.
Well, I mean, what this shows us clearly is that technically, there is nothing you take from the IMF that will not be that will be without strings.
Without strings, right.
But it's just that this time around, because we're taking from a particular instrument that that belongs to us more or less, that we're entitled to. So there are no conditionalities. But the IMF, in all the statements that they have made after the board approved that $3.4 billion, have offered technical advice, which is of course, part of the responsibility of the IMF, and trying to indicate to Nigeria that apart from ensuring macroeconomic stability, there are certain policies that the Central Bank of Nigeria may need to reverse in the long-term interest of the Nigerian economy. And one of the most controversial policies that the CBN under Godwin Emefiele had introduced is this multiple exchange window. Yes. I think he's been on this program before, and he tried to defend it. And of course, other people have also been just as determined in saying that it doesn't work.
Right.
Now, in March, the CBN shifted a little when it devalued the official rate. Yes. From 306 to 360, yeah. And then the BDC from 380 per dollar to 360. Right?
No, so 380. So for the I&E window has now gone from 360 to 380.
To 380. Yes. But you see, the problem there is that there is still a very narrow room for arbitrage, which a lot of people have complained about. So you create a situation which in itself is not sustainable. Right. And the advice from the experts has always been, look, float the naira and let it find its level, its true value.
Right.
And then, you have a more realistic picture of what is going on, particularly as the exchange rate in the black market is as high as, is it 480?
Well, 450,
480, it goes up and down. So I think that, this is a good development, and it would, be welcomed by many players within the economy who have been saying that this is the kind of thing that the CBN needs to do. I know it must have been quite a tough decision for the CBN governor to take, considering its position on the usefulness of the flexible exchange rates regime that will run seriously.
Well, real quick, the floating parts, I mean, we have to be careful about that. A free float, it should probably be a managed float. The CBN still has to manage it, but the unification is good now.
I was going to say, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it will spike. I mean, the price will spike, and they have to be careful of that. But still, doctors, that intention is something that we should follow.
Certainly. Thank you for today's updates, and have a great weekend ahead. We'll go on a short break now, and when we are back, Aaron Akerejola will join us for some COVID-19 updates. Stay with us.
To the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Joining us now with COVID-19 global update is Aaron Akerejola. Aaron?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Leila.
Happy Workers' Day.
Yes. Thank God it's Friday, as they always say. Okay. And let's get straight into the numbers. And the actual number, as we speak right now, from data from the Johns Hopkins University and Medicine, says that 3.2 million people, actually 3,259,167 is actually the number right now of COVID-19 cases confirmed around the world. The total number of deaths is 233,439, with over 27,967 deaths in Italy. Italy recording the highest number of deaths, followed by the UK, then Spain, France, then New York City, and it goes on with Belgium and the rest of them. So as it stands right now, Italy recording the most number of deaths from COVID-19. Now, if we're to chime into Africa, as it is right now, as of this morning, the data coming in still shows that South Africa has actually recorded the most number of COVID-19 cases with 5,647, while Egypt has got 5,537. Coming in third is Morocco with 4,423, then Algeria 4,006. And let's tell you that in fourth place is Ghana, who have actually passed the 2,000 mark of confirmed COVID-19 cases with 2,074, while Nigeria is also edging closer to that number with 1,932 confirmed cases in Nigeria. Nigeria is still sixth, so as it stands right now, those are some of the numbers coming in. Looking at some of the infected regions, 187 countries around the world. You look at all these numbers, and it's still frightening that it's still growing at an exponential rate, certainly.
Yes, I agree with you that it's still frightening. But globally, what we hear from WHO is that the race for a vaccine is apace. There are about 102 submissions in terms of, trials, attempts to test vaccines across the world. 4 of these attempts in China alone, an effort between the United States, a group in the United States and a group in Europe, one from the United Kingdom, and then one again independently from the United States, are the ones that have been isolated for trials, about 8 in total. But in all of this, there has been no significant effort from Africa. Africa is excluded. Nobody in Africa has notified the WHO that they are trying to do a vaccine. And you place that against the report yesterday by the African Center for Disease Control. The African Center for Disease Control indicated that Africa is far behind. Yes. And that although there are efforts in some parts of Africa, there will be a need to harmonize the group of researchers in Africa to see how we can be part of this global search. For the most part in Africa, people are talking about nutritional solution in Egypt, where they are talking about using honey, even if there is one trial going on. In Nigeria, the report says what we're doing is just therapeutic. In Madagascar, they have a herbal drink that Senegal now wants to import, that Democratic Republic of Congo, Guinea-Bissau, and also I think Nigeria want to import. Well, we are not alone among countries that are talking about alternative medicine. Bolivia is taking the option of a herbal steam. But the position of WHO is that, there's no alternative medicine solution that has been found yet, and that people should be very careful about unscientific trials. The second issue is about the easing of restrictions. You said South Africa has the highest number in Africa, yes, and you are absolutely correct. But South Africa also wants to ease restrictions. And as Comrade Adams Oshiomhole pointed out this morning in the interview that we had with him, it's very curious, that countries that are already flattening the curve are being cautious. But you find African countries where cases are going up, threatening to ease restrictions. Nigeria is going that route, but we'll see how it happens after a week of easing the restrictions.
We can only know after we've tried. That's the honest truth at this point. Aaron, thank you for today's updates. Have a great weekend ahead.